Sayın Rektörümüz Profesör Doktor Atilla Arkan, İnsan ve Toplum Bilimleri Fakültesi Dekanımız Sayın Profesör Doktor Alev Erkilet, saygıdeğer misafirimiz Profesör Doktor Salman Sayyid ve birbirinden kıymetli hocalarımız ve çok değerli katılımcılarımız, hepiniz İbn Haldun Üniversitesi Sosyoloji Bölümü ve Toplumsal Araştırma ve Düşünce Kulübü ortaklığında düzenlenen 1. Sosyoloji Günleri etkinliğimize hoş geldiniz. Esteemed President Professor Atilla Arkan, Dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences Professor Alev Erkilet, our esteemed guest Professor Salman Sayyid, and our distinguished scholars and participants, you are all welcome to our first Sociology Days event, which is organized in partnership with the Department of Sociology and Societal Research and Thought Club. Günümüz dünyasında sosyal dönüşüm, zaman, hız ve mekan başlığı altında yapılacak olan öğrenci araştırma sempozyumunda sinema, dijitalleşme, globalleşme, ötekileştirme, milliyetçilik, ırkçılık, toplumsal cinsiyet ve göç gibi birçok konu hem İbn Haldun Üniversitesi hem de farklı üniversitelerden katılan lisans ve lisansüstü öğrenci arkadaşlarımız tarafından ele alınacaktır. İşlenen konuların farklı perspektifler tarafından değerlendirilmesini ve akademik bir zeminde tartışılmasını amaçladığımız bu etkinlikte bizlerle olduğunuz için mutluluk duymaktayız. Our Student Research Symposium that will be held under the title Social Transformation in the Contemporary World, Time, Pace and Space, main issues such as cinema, digitalization, globalization, marginalization, nationalism, racism, gender and migration will be discussed by both undergraduate and graduate students from both Ibn Haldun University and different universities. We are glad to have you with us at this event, where we aim to evaluate the topics covered by different perspectives and discuss them on an academic basis. Karşılama konuşmasını yapmak üzere Sayın Rektörümüz Profesör Doktor Atilla Arkan hocamızı sahneye davet ediyorum. I invite esteemed Professor Atilla Arkan to the stage to give the opening speech.
Dear guests, first of all, welcome to our university and our country. Değerli öğrenciler, sevgili akademisyenler, öncelikle hepinize hoş geldiniz derim. Öncelikle bu güzel etkinlikte, sempozyumda emeği olan arkadaşlara tek tek teşekkür etmek isterim. Tabii ki öncelikle ilk teşekkür öğrenci kulübümüze, Toplumsal Araştırma Kulübümüze, kendilerine enerjileriyle bu salona hakikaten hareket katıyorlar ve işin büyüğüne onlar yükleniyor. Çok çok teşekkür ederiz. Tabii ki aynı zamanda onlara sık sık söylediğim gibi kendilerine en büyük yatırımı yapıyorlar. Teşekkür ederiz. İkinci olarak Sosyoloji bölümümüze, Sayın Dekanımız Alev Hocamıza, Sayın Bölüm Başkanımız Ramazan Hocamıza ve diğer değerli hocalarımıza katkılarından dolayı teşekkür ederiz. Tabii ki arka planda çalışan arkadaşlar var. Onlara da emeklerinden dolayı teşekkür ederiz. Ve dear guests, also thank you very much for your contribution to our student symposium. Welcome again. Şimdi bu sempozyumda 60'a yakın sunum var ve yine bu sunumlardan ilkini Dr. Salman Sayyid yapacak. Thank you very much Dr. Salman for your contribution. İnşallah bu etkinliğimizin, öğrenci sempozyumumuzun ülkemizin ve dünyanın entelektüel gelişimine, en azından sorunları anlama ve bunları derinden hissetme sürecine, eğer mümkün olursa da çözüm önerine ve sosyal politika gelişimine katkıda bulunmasını temenni ederim. Hiç şüphesiz ki çok hızlı değişen bir dünyada yaşıyoruz. Şimdi girişte de Ramazan Hocama takılmıştım. Sosyoloji ve sosyal bilimler aslında bildiğiniz gibi modern, yani hikayenin başına döndüğümüzde sanayileşme, ki onun öncesinde bilim ve teknolojiye dayanıyor. Yani dediğimiz şey bilim ve teknolojiye enderliğinde dünyanın, hani biz modernleşme dediğimiz dönem bir değişim dönemiydi. Ve değişimin iki kaba hatlarıyla, tabii ki Batı üzerinden okuyoruz. Bizim kendi geleneğimiz var ama tabii ki siyasi olarak hegemonik olamadığımızdan dolayı Onu yeterince temsil edemedik. Şu anda nispeten farklı bir dünyada yaşıyoruz. Bugün yeni bir imkanlara sahibiz. Ama tarihin o noktasına gittiğimizde şunu fark etmeliyiz ki büyük çatışma dini geleneklerle tırnak içerisinde bir miktar felsefi gelenekten gelen ama o zaman artık yeni bir isim olarak ortaya çıkan bilim adamları ve onun etrafındaki entelektüeller arasında doğmuştu. Ve sosyal bilimler aslında bu anlamda seküler bir gelenektir. Tabii ki bugün itibariyle biz bu geleneğin, bu yaklaşımın doğru olup olmadığına dair ciddi entelektüel çabalarda da bulunuyoruz. Ve klasiğe döndürdüğümüzde meselenin temel sorunu şudur. Tabii ki dini önemseyen zümreler için dini geleneklerin bize bildirdikleriyle yaşadığımız dünyada ortaya çıkan sorunlar arasında biz nasıl bir çözüm bulabiliriz? Ve burada dini geleneklerin anlamı nedir? Bunu nasıl bir yere koyacağız? Bu kadim bir sorun. Sürekli olarak devam edecek. Farklı farklı pozisyonlar ve modeller ortaya çıkıyor. Şimdi üniversite olarak biz misyonumuzu en genel hatlarıyla sunacak olursak ki bu da onun parçası. Öncelikli olarak biz şunu önemsiyoruz. Tarihsel birikimimizi sahip çıkmak. Burada da kastettiğimiz şey şu. Tarihsel birikimi takdir edebilmek. Yani hangi sorunlarla yüzleşiyordu ve hangi aletlerle, araçlarla bunların bir kısmı teorik, bir kısmı kavramsal, bir kısmı da kurumsal olarak ortaya çıktı. Bunları takdir edebilmek ve dolayısıyla kendi bağlamında anlayabilmek. Ve ondan sonra eğer bizim şu an ve gelecekte yaşayacağımız sorunlara dair bir ilham kaynağı olacaksa ona dair de ondan istifade edebilmek. Ama tabii ki biz entelektüeller olarak önemli bir görevimiz de tarihsel birikimimizi de eleştirebilmektir. Bu eleştiri gücü aynı zamanda günümüz sorunlarını çözebilmeyi ve geleceğe dair yeni çözüm önerileri üretebilme gücü verecektir. İkinci önemli sorunumuz ise günümüz dünyasını anlamak. İşte sempozyumda gördüğünüz gibi ana başlığı bu oluşturuyor. Yani günümüz dünyasının anlaşılması, buradaki sorunların titizlikle, entelektüel bir işçilikle farkına varabilmesi ve şüphesiz ki bu sorunların olumlu ve olumsuz yönleri olacaktır. Onları takdir edip onlara çözümler üretebilmek. Yine sosyal bilimler ve araştırma üniversitesi olarak bizim üçüncü önemli misyonumuz ise bireylerimizi, toplumumuzu geleceğe hazırlayabilmektir. Eğer biz İbn Haldun Üniversitesi olarak buna katkıda bulunursak kendimizi onurlu, mutlu ve başarılı hissederiz. Günümüze geldiğimizde günümüzün 17. yüzyıldan en temelde farklılaştıran şey artık değişim değil. 17. yüzyıldaki en temel mesele değişimdi. Bugün ise internet teknolojisi, yapay zeka, nanoteknolojiler ve buna bağlı diğer teknolojilerle beraber aslında bizim bugün konuştuğumuz şey değişimin hızıdır. Değişimin hızını çok hızlı bir şekilde yaşıyoruz ve sempozyuma konu olan konular aslında bir yönüyle kadim ama bir yönüyle de bu değişimin hızıyla karşılaşarak çok farklı formatlarda ve çerçevelerde kendisini sunmaktadır. Ve dolayısıyla değişimin bu hızlı dünyasına baktığımızda aslında geçmişte olduğu gibi bu meselenin hem olumlu yönleri var hem olumsuz yönleri var. Yani evet bu bilim ve teknoloji sürecinde gerçekleşen değişimler sağlık teknolojilerini geliştirdi, sigorta sistemi geliştirdi, nanoteknolojiler çok daha küçük araçlarla çok daha etkin hizmetleri yapabilmeyi bize imkan veriyor. Yine nesnelerin interneti, yapay zeka ve makine öğrenmesi bize sorunları en azından veri olarak yerinde tespit edebilmeyi ve analiz imkanını veriyor. Bunlar olumlu yönleri. Ama hiç şüphesiz meselenin olumsuz yönleri de var. Mesela 150 yıllık tarihimize baktığımızda gelir dağılımı sürekli olarak artıyor. İnsan, yani birey, kurumlar, devlet ve sermaye arasındaki ilişkiler en azından ana parametreye baktığımızda gittikçe bozuluyor. Bu belki de insanlığın yaşadığı en önemli sorunlardan bir tanesi. Yine diğer önemli alanlardan bir tanesi göç. Göç hiç şüphesiz ki sanayileşmeyle beraber başlayan bir şeydi. Ama bugün ise özellikle küresel hegeman tırnak içerisinde çerçevesinde yaşanan çatışmalar sebebiyle ki ben büyük ölçüde Rusya-Ukrayna savaşını bunun bir sonucu olarak görüyorum ve muhtemelen yine yakın gelecekteki siz de bunu ciddi bir şekilde takip ediyorsunuz. Amerika ile Çin arasındaki oluşan gerilim ve bunun hangi fay hatlarını tetikleyeceğini doğrusu merakla bekliyoruz. Ama kesinlikle o fay hatları tarihin bir anında kırılacak ve biz hem ülke olarak hem birey olarak bunlara hazırlık yapmak durumundayız. Bu tartışmalar veya bu olan olaylar göçü hızlandırıyor ve göç modernleşmede hatırlarsanız göç büyük ölçüde ülkelerin içindeki olan bir olaydı. Kırsal alandan şehirlere doğru gidiyorduk ama bugün bu benim en azından zihnimde gelir dağılımının son derece kötü olmasından dolayı artık kıtalar arasında yaşanıyor ve ülkeler arasında yaşanıyor. İnsanoğlu doğası gereği güvenliğin, refahın, zenginliğin olduğu bir yere doğru gidiyor. Ve dolayısıyla meseleyi büyük perspektiften anlayıp buna dair akılcı, yerinde çözümleri üretmemiz gerekiyor. Evet arkadaşlar, ben korsan bir tebliğ yapmak istemiyorum. Siz bütün bu değişen olguları toplumsal dönüşümde, sosyal hayatta ve siyasette, ekonomide olan bütün bu toplumsal dönüşümleri 60 tane seminer boyunca veya sunum boyunca inceleyeceksiniz, analiz edeceksiniz. Tekrar emeği geçen herkese teşekkür ediyorum. Yine misafirlerimize hoş geldiniz diyorum. Sağ olun, var olun.
Sayın Rektörümüze bu güzel konuşması için teşekkür ediyoruz. We thank Professor Arkan for his kind speech. Şimdi ise açılış notlarını sunmak üzere öncelikle İnsan ve Toplum Bilimleri Fakültesi Dekanımız, değerli hocamız Profesör Doktor Alev Erkilet'i sahneye davet ediyorum. I invite Dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Professor Alev Erkilet, to the stage for making opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Welcome, dear friends. Welcome all to our Ibn Haldun University Sociology Department's first Sociology Days activity and event. It is very important for us because for years, nearly for 3 years, we were dreaming about this activity. And 2022 is a very special year for us because this year, inshallah, our first students will be our first graduates. That's why we were dreaming to realize the activity before their departure from our department. And Alhamdulillah, today this dream is realizing. And we are very happy to share this happiness with you at the same time. As you know very well, the Sociology Days activities focus, arkadaşlar, is students. Graduate and undergraduate students have the opportunity to share their research and experiences with the academic community in these kind of activities. And according to me, this is a very important step in the institutionalization of our department and faculty at the same time, and university at the same time, of course. Çünkü it is a national-wide activity. We have the chance to come together with friends from other universities and friends from other cities. That's why it is a really very special moment for us. Inshallah, for the 3 days, today, tomorrow, and on Sunday, our dear students and our guests will be sharing their research with you. And we will be very proud to walk with them and to share with them their experiences in their academic journey. So I don't want to talk too much. I'm very excited, and I want to say welcome to you again. And we must leave the floor to our students and listen to our students and feed from them at the same time. So inshallah, we will come together in the sessions in the Humanities building, B3 and B23 classes. See you there, inshallah. Welcome again. We are very happy to be with you here. Welcome.
Kıymetli hocamıza bu güzel konuşması için bize yeniden teşekkür ediyoruz. We thank Professor Erkilet for her kind speech. Şimdi ise Sosyoloji Bölümü Başkanımız Profesör Doktor Ramazan Aras'ı da karşılama konuşmalarını yapmak üzere sahneye davet ediyorum. I invite Head of the Sociology Department, Professor Ramazan Aras, to the stage for giving his speech.
I start the timer. Okay, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good morning, günaydın, sabahul khair, rojbash. Dear our President, dear our Dean, dear colleagues, participants, students, and guests. As the Chair of Department of Sociology, I would like to welcome you all for being with us today in this delightful sunny spring day of Istanbul. Today, we are having a great honor to have our opening keynote speaker, Professor Salman Sayyid, who is joining us from the University of Leeds. Salman, we are very happy to have you today. Thank you for sparing your precious time and accepting our invitation. We have been also very excited by presence of Professor Irfan Ahmed, who has recently joined Ibn Khaldun University family. Irfan will make a great contribution to our event with his closing keynote on Sunday, inshallah. As a 5-year-old department, we are very excited to support the organization of our first Sociology Days event this year, which has been postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our journey as a department started in the spring of 2017, and this year we are very happy to graduate our first cohort of students at our undergraduate program who are also presenting their graduation thesis in the research symposium. Our fundamental objective and desire for taking this initiative is to create an intellectual and academic platform for undergraduate and graduate students at both national and international levels in order to facilitate medium of dialogue among young researchers and to play a role in advancing knowledge in social sciences. As a department, we locate ourselves in the role of sociology and social sciences with a mission to train researchers with a critical approach and to develop their skills for analyzing and challenging the hegemonic academic approaches in social sciences. We do want to provide our students a new perspective and a vision that entails making use of historical material and knowledge in order to develop a new vocabulary and critical perspective, and thus gaining the ability to grasp the changing currents in the world around us. In line with this mission and vision, today, we hope that our student research symposium, which is titled Social Transformation in the Contemporary World, Time, Pace, and Space, will make a modest contribution to the field of social sciences. The young researchers coming from 16 different universities from Turkey and abroad are bringing very exciting, remarkable, and rewarding student papers, and I hope you will enjoy in the following days. I am very proud to announce that Sociology Days event has been a student initiative by our undergraduate and graduate students. In this context, I want to thank those also Ibn Khaldun University undergraduate students from other departments who are united together with our students under the umbrella of Societal Research and Thought Club for their labor and enthusiasm which they have performed during every stage of this organization. In the last months, many people have worked very enthusiastically to make this 3 days event possible. First of all, I want to thank my colleague Nursem Keskin-Aksay, and I thank for the support of our departmental research assistant Safanur Altuncu and Ibrahim Emre Yanık for their support. I am also very grateful for the labor of the members of the academic board of the Student Research Symposium, particularly to Mehmet Ali Başak, Nesibe Demir, İlhan İbrahim, Betül Tozlu, Sıla Öztürk, Süheyla Koçak Erdal, Nevin Fethi Muhammed, Zulkarneyn Muhammed, Aisha Sayyid, and Enes Malik Aktaş. I want to thank particularly to the members of the organizing committee, particularly to the head of the organization, Ebu Bekir Soylu, and his great team, namely Büşra Polat, Zeynep Nesibe Gören, Sevde Gül Ekici, Halil İbrahim Aksen, Şena Kader, Zülal Merve Bulut, Meryem Betül Kasapoğlu, Büşra Kılıç, Nuseybe Karagöz, Besra Betül Topkaya, Hanne Nur Açıkgöz, and Özge Öztürk. Well done. Thank you very much for your effort and enthusiasm. I also want to thank our staff at the Department of Corporate Communication and Publicity for their tremendous technical support for bringing all these events together successfully. Fatih Razi, thank you very much for your time and energy. Lastly, on behalf of the Sociology Department, I want to thank you all again for attending our event and being with us today. Thank you very much.
Kıymetli hocamıza bu güzel konuşması için biz de tekrar teşekkür ediyoruz. We thank Professor Aras for his kind speech. Son olarak Toplumsal Araştırma ve Düşünce Kulübü Başkanımız Ebu Bekir Soylu'yu sahneye davet ediyorum. Finally, I would like to invite Societal Research and Thought Club President Ebu Bekir Soylu to the stage for his opening speech.
Selamünaleyküm. Öncelikle her ne kadar haddimiz ve hakkımız olmasa da bu konuşma hakkını bize tanıdıkları için, bunu nasip ettikleri için bütün hocalarıma teşekkür ediyorum. Çok zamanınızı almadan kulüpte de sürekli desteklediğimiz iki dillilik politikası gereği önce kısa bir Türkçe konuşma, sonrasında da birkaç şey İngilizce olarak paylaşmaya çalışacağım. Öncelikle değerli rektörümüze, bizi katılımıyla şereflendiren Profesör Doktor Salman Sayyid hocamıza ve diğer bütün hocalarımıza çok çok teşekkür ediyorum. Başlangıçta hemen şunu eklemek istiyorum. Her ne kadar Ramazan hocamız ekipten sadece bazı isimleri saymış olsa da background'da yaklaşık 35-40 kişilik bir ekip sadece organizasyon için çalıştı. Hala da çalışmaya devam ediyorlar. Hepsine sizlerin önünde tek tek teşekkürlerimi iletmek istiyorum. Çok büyük bir emek koydular ortaya. Yola çıkarken kısaca kulüp üzerinden, sonrasında da sosyoloji günleri üzerinden özelinde birkaç şey paylaşacağım sizlerle. Çünkü akademik kısım zaten şu anda bizim yeni başladığımız bir hikaye. Yeni bir journey bizim için. Kulübü kurarken öncelikle şunu hedeflemiştik biz. Bir sosyoloji kulübü evet olabilir ama sosyolojiyi kapsayan daha büyük bir şey de olabilir demiştik ve toplumsal araştırma ve düşünce olarak isimlendirdik bunu. Ve buradaki temel istediklerimizden birisi de olabildiğince kapsayıcı bir kulüp olmasıydı. Tek bir alana kısıtlanmamasıydı. Ve burada başlıkta da gördüğünüz gibi zaman, hız ve mekanı, ki yaklaşık 60 tane konuşma olacak ve bunların hepsi farklı alanlara hitap ediyor. Kimisi dijitale, kimisi farklı dünyalara. Bunları birleştirmeye çalıştık ve farklı diller altında bunu yaptık. Kulüp içinde yönetim kurulunda 12 kişi olsak da 8 farklı bölümden, 7 farklı milletten bir yönetim kurulumuz var ve sürekli international alanında bir şeyler yapmaya çalışıyoruz. Özellikle bir öğrenci kulübü olarak hele ki ilk yılında bu salonu doldurarak farklı etkinlikler yaptık. Evet, hepsi öğrenci etkinliğiydi. Yemek yediğimiz etkinlikler daha zevkli bir şekilde. Ama bir sempozyum ayarlamak, bunun bir parçası olmak hepimiz için sıfırdan ve çok kaliteli bir tecrübe oldu. Burada şuna değinmek istiyorum. Temelde evet bir araştırma olacak, akademik kısım olacak veya bilgi paylaşılacak diye düşünüyordu ama biz yeni nesil olarak mı diyeyim, artık nasıl isimlendirirseniz bilmiyorum, veya yeni öğrenciler olarak bunu dijitalle birleştirmeye, teknolojiyle birleştirmeye çalıştık. Rektör hocamızın en başta değindiği gibi o tarihe sahip çıkmaya, kültüre, ki bunu bölümde sürekli yapıyoruz. Ama aynı zamanda teknolojiyi de eklemeye çalışıyoruz. Bugün sınıflara gittiğiniz zaman, panellere katıldığınız zaman orada kağıtlar da göreceksiniz ama her birinize verilen yaka kartlarında QR kodlar da var. Bu QR kodları tarayarak da çok hızlı bir şekilde ulaşabileceksiniz. Biz burada bu en küçük örneği sistem içinde kullandığımız, bunlar sayesinde hem dijitalle akademiyi buluşturmaya çalıştık hem de işleri daha pratik hale getirmeye çalıştık. Buradan söyleyince çok basit dursa da background'da çok farklı etkiler bırakıyor ve umarım araştırma ve düşünce kısmında da bütün katılımcılara ve diğer arkadaşlarımıza da yardımcı olur. Hızlıca sosyoloji günleri özelinde sempozyum diye zikrediyoruz. Hocaların belki kızabilir. Ama bir öğrenci inisiyatifine olduk söylesem ve bütün hazırlayan bütün ekip öğrencilerden oluşuyor. Burada sinema gösteriminden söyleşi olsun, salon içi, salon dışı etkinlikler olacak. Arada kafe breakler vesaire olacak. Akademik ve resmiyet kısmı olacak. Çok özür dileyerek söylüyorum ama eğlenme kısmına da lütfen çalışın. O anı birleşerek daha çok interaktif hale gelerek geçirmeye çalışmanız bizim için çok daha kaliteli bir süreç oluşturacaktır ve unutulmaz hatıralara vesile olacaktır inşallah. Okay, şimdi İngilizce deme zamanı geldi. Her ne kadar istemesem de. And firstly, I would like to share that I just get my graduation from the English prep school in 2 years. That's why sometimes our school of the language school, say coordinator Furkan Hoca just kid with me sometimes. But Alhamdulillah, at the end of these 2 years, now I'm a president of the Societal Research and Thought Club, and I would like to mention that it's not social. I must mention that it's societal, not social. There's a discussion, we can discuss it between the coffee breaks, those who would like to discuss or learn more. And now we are, as a team, as a club, we are able to make this symposium with the support of the university and department and academic board, which is, how can I say, which also support and surround us in the academic words as usual, let's say. Anyway, sorry. And one more thing that I would like to mention here, and that when we established this club, we wanted to spread of awareness in terms of technology, digital tools, and sociology, and how we can combine all this under the title of academic world and academy, students, and the clubs. And here in the club, we aim to make some academic studies, kind of research, and thought activities, let's say, but it's about 10 or 15%. On the rest of it, we also try to have fun and to make some different events as a club. But here, particularly if we talk about sociology days, it's not an exact symposium that we should be so disciplined or so legal, so formalized. So we would like you to have fun. We would like you to have interaction with others. Okay, we will have some panels, we will have some sessions. You can discuss everything else there, but the rest of them, please try to have fun. There will be movie screening, then we will have interviews, meetings. There will be indoor and outdoor events. These are for you and for all of us. And once again, I would like to thank you all of our team. And I shared this at the beginning when I was speaking in Turkish. Even though the Ramazan Hoca and our professors, thank you to the teams, there are many people over 30. They have been working for this and they will be working for the coming days. And thank you so much for your attendance. And thank you so much. Please have fun.
Biz de kulüp başkanımıza bu güzel konuşması için teşekkür ediyoruz. We thank Ebu Bekir for this beautiful speech. Now, Türkçe konuşacaktım. Şimdi ise İrfan hocamıza açılış konuşmalarını yapmak üzere. Tamam, tamam. Şimdi oraya geçiyorum o zaman. hemen geçiyorum. Tamam. Kıymetli hocamız Profesör Doktor İrfan Ahmet hocamızı direkt onu yapıyorum. Tamam. O zaman İngilizceye geçiyorum şimdi. I invite esteemed Professor Salman Sayyid to the stage for making his presentation.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you for your kind invitation from the faculty, from the dean, from Razan, from everyone for being here. I take what Abu Bakr said very seriously. I want people to have fun, but listen while I'm talking and have fun afterwards. It's there. So I'm really, really pleased to be here. I don't know how we're going to do this. I'll just done this. Okay. So okay, that's the clicker. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is a good way of starting. In many parts of the world, including here, we often begin things with Bismillah. And the question is, one question would be, what does that mean? And of course, you could say, of course, Bismillah means in the name of God, and everyone knows that, it's not a problem. But another sociological question might be, when do people say it? Who says it? And some people will say, well, they don't know how to say it properly. They don't know what it means. They don't know what it really means. And perhaps it's a sign of extremism. Maybe it's a sign of religion. You can imagine different kinds of questions around just this phrase, this beginning of this phrase. And you could say, well, what does it mean to say Bismillah in a world dominated by Western categories? Why should you say Bismillah in an academic conference? Academic conferences are secular, or they're supposed to be secular. And what is the name of God having to do with academic conferences? Now, to ask this question is both strange and unnecessary, but also something that we often forget. That it is very rare that if you went to the United States or Germany and you began Bismillah. And it's not because you are talking about being a Muslim or not, but in general, you wouldn't begin with the name of God. But there are many people here who would say everything begins with the name of God. So how do we have both of these things possible in spaces like this? So we talk about the idea of the university and what is the university purpose. The university's purpose is to produce knowledge. And one way of thinking about knowledge is perhaps the knowledge. What is the relationship between knowledge and questions like the use of the phrase Bismillah? Can it be an anthropological study? Can it be ethnography? What does it open up for us? Don't worry, I know this is a sociological conference and I'm not going to ask theological questions. Except, of course, theology lies behind every kind of sociological or any kind of endeavor. But to make that claim, I'm going to try and say three things in this, and make three kinds of remarks in the first question. First one is, will my technology work? And the second one is, the answer to that is no. So it'll take me a while to, while I master this. There, we got it there. Sorry. I went too fast. Now it stopped, okay. So we failed on the first question, so should we move on to the second question? Okay. Right. So what I want to talk about, and what I was given as a brief, is to talk about social change. And I would say to you, in one way, sociology, as it stands, and we'll see, is very basic. There are many, many definitions and many, many understandings of sociology. And I want to know and ask you, what would sociology have to be like? What would it need to change for it to be able to accommodate the idea of Bismillah as a way of beginning? Okay, that's just, I want you to keep, I'm not sure that I will have the answer at the end of the talk, but the fun is the fact that I won't have the answer. I will just raise the questions and let you work it out. By the way, one thing I wanted to say before I started, I did want to congratulate the students who will be graduating this year for the first time from this university. It's a tremendous achievement, and I think you should be really proud of yourselves. And you should be able to answer this question if I can't, so that's your task. If I can't answer anything, you need to answer those things. Okay, so if we think about sociology, sociology as a way of, there are many, many definitions, but the most basic one would be, is the study of society. And it's a study of society that addresses one particular question or a series of questions: why things change and why things remain the same. If you can do that, you can call yourself a sociologist or a social scientist or whatever you prefer, or a political scientist, it doesn't matter. The other thing is this, that I'm going to use sociology to be interchangeable with social sciences generally. So if I'm treading on any disciplinary grounds or on disciplinary feet, forgive me, but here we are. It's for brevity's sake, but also I think there's a reason for this. But if you think about this real question, why things change and why things remain the same, we are already moving away from sociology to a question of history, because we're bringing in the idea of time in that prospect. So to go back to this question, if we were doing this in France, if we were in a university in France, it would be very, very difficult. Well, many of you would not be allowed to be here wearing what you're wearing, for starters, but let's not talk about that. But nor could we even begin with Bismillah in the same way. Yeah? So the question is already, why is it that things have changed? And why is it that some things remain the same? So that really, it seems to me, is the kind of sociological question to ask. And how we try and answer that question is perhaps what sociological knowledge is all about, trying to answer that question. And you can see that there are many, many studies, and they can take many different forms. They can be field work, they can be theoretical studies, all trying to answer this question. The difficulty is, of course, that the heart of this question are two categories that we don't often talk about. One of them is the first part, society. Think on this for a minute. What exactly is society? I'm not going to answer that question right now, but I will a little bit later on, but I would like you to think about it. So one way of thinking about sociology and history is the way that it connects us from what has gone before, what will come together. It explains the moment of change. It explains the fact that change is always around us. If we think about change, which we rarely do, except that we're always experiencing it. Constantly we're experiencing it, but it's invisible to us. We don't reflect upon it. It's only when we're looking back we say, oh, my life has changed. I have changed. I have grown older. So was the fact. Nobody ever says I've grown younger, which is a disappointment to many, but this is it is, yeah? We're constantly changing, but we're never aware of that change that is happening around us. Okay, this is the part where I need to test you. These are two maps. I hope all of you can guess what they're maps of. The question I have is, which is the most accurate map, A or B? All right, hands up who thinks it's B. Okay, hands up who thinks it's A. Okay, I will say to you, you're both wrong. This is a trick question, because the question here was, if you say the map is accurate, what do you mean it's accurate? Because the problem with the map is the Earth, this may be news to some, is round. And putting a round surface, it's a sphere, not round, on a flat leads to distortions. Can everyone see that? Okay? Now, if it leads to distortions, we're talking about inaccuracies. The question is, which distortions are we more comfortable with? So, if you look at the differences between map A and map B, can anyone tell me what the biggest difference they notice when they look between a map A or map B? The hand gestures. What is it? Continents? Yeah. So map B, if you look at map A, you'll see how big Europe is. If you look at map B, you can hardly see Europe. If you look at map A, Greenland is almost big as Africa, or it almost looks bigger than Africa. If you look at map B, you see Greenland, and you look at Africa. Now, in these two distortions, tells you a lot of stories about when the map was made. So this is the Mercator projection. It was very, very popular for the last 300 years, or actually right up to the 1970s. And what it does, it's very good for navigation, but it also has the effect of making certain parts of the world look a lot bigger. The second map is actually tries to reproduce the area. So the area is accurate, but the shapes are distorted. Here, the shapes are more accurate, but the area is distorted. I mean, it's simplifying it, but that's the basic argument, right? So someone decided it was more important this level of distortion compared to that level of distortion. So when we talk about accuracy and knowledge as being accurate, you will notice that we already have a problem. Because to make something look accurate, we want to compare it with something else, something external. But something external doesn't really tell us about whether it's accurate or not. It just tells us what kind of distortions we can have. And I would say to you, that's not a bad metaphor for human knowledge, that all we have is different kinds of distortions. Because in the end, what is accurate is not necessarily something that we can rest upon, that we can know that is accurate. Accuracy would depend on something external to our way of being able to understand things. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you with the map. And I wanted to suggest to you that the way we look at things is not that easy for us to step out of the way we look at things. And this is a quote from Ludwig Wittgenstein, who talks about how a picture holds us captive. We are inside that picture. And if we are inside that picture, everything around us confirms the accuracy of that picture. So think about the world of sociology as being a picture that students, graduates, undergraduates, academics, we all are in. And everything that we do confirms that picture for us. And therefore, we have no other way of knowing about the accuracy or inaccuracy. We simply live in that picture. Okay, the next part is the kind of assumption I'm going to make, which goes back to the very idea of sociology and the social sciences. And I would say to you that, let's say sociology is basically Western knowledge. And as such, it puts a challenge for us in the world which is no longer dominated by the West. So the post-Western already creates a challenge for this. Now, if I say to you that sociology is Western, no doubt, knowing which university you're in, you will mention to me, well, what about Ibn Khaldun? Surely he's not Western. But I would say to you, when did he become a sociologist? Only now. He could only become a sociologist when we were in the post-Western. If you look at sociology textbooks produced inevitably in European languages or their various translations, even 30, 40 years ago, it is very unlikely that they would start off with Ibn Khaldun. At some point, people started mentioning Ibn Khaldun. And now, because of the decolonizing the curriculum movement, it is almost much more popular to begin with Ibn Khaldun, etc., etc. But at what point they become sociologists is at the point where sociology starts entering a world which is post-Western. Now, there may be some of you who may want to say, no, okay, forget about Ibn Khaldun, but sociology isn't Western, it's simply universal. It's about understanding society. And there have always been societies, and it doesn't matter what you think about society, or it always exists, and therefore studying society isn't Western or Eastern, Northern or Southern. It's just learning. It's just accurate. Yeah. There is a lovely quote which I often use by Deng Xiaoping, the man responsible for the modernization of China after Mao, where he sort of argued that it doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice, it's a good cat. So I would say to you, it doesn't matter. No, I wouldn't say that. Some may say that. It doesn't matter if sociology is Western or Eastern or Northern or Southern. As long as it understands society, it's good. But I would say to you, perhaps I would like to spend a little time convincing you that sociology isn't innocent. And there's a reason why one should be suspicious about sociology's claim to be simply universal, to apply to everybody. The discipline of sociology began to be consolidated with the modern contemporary university, mainly in Germany, and from Germany to the United States, and it spread. Yeah? And it arose at the moment when the world, Europe, was experiencing what it describes as modernization, modernity, etc. And therefore, it was considered to be the study of society, the study of modern societies, and therefore the study of Europeanness. At the same time, another discipline emerges called anthropology, which is the study of man, and it was man, not woman, so it was man. It was the study of the primitive, which means not the modern, and it was the study of the non-European. If you look at classical anthropological texts, they are focused, well, how do you do anthropology? You go out there and you find a non-European society. Often it meant going to Melanesia, going to Africa, going to the Amazon, and you meet these people and you investigate them. Now, since then, I take it, and I do not wish to be disrespectful to any anthropologists in the audience. If I am being, forgive me. But anthropology has been apologizing that for many, many years. So what does it do? We will do more anthropology, but we'll do anthropology of immigrant communities. And what do you mean by immigrant communities? Those who are not European, but in Europe, for example. Yeah. Now, there are some who would say, let's do anthropology of EU bureaucrats, or let's do an anthropology of scientists. But in general, if you went to the library, or if you Googled it and looked at anthropology PhDs, I think, if there were not so many Muslims here and we wanted to take a bet, we would say that most of them would be on societies which were considered to be non-European. Yeah? So, why is it that there was a distinction between sociology and anthropology if sociology is a study of society? Clearly, the idea was that society could only happen in some places and not in other places. In which case, when we say, well, society is everywhere, sociologies used to say, no, it's not. Now, you may say, okay, but that was a long time ago. That was 30 years ago. That was before the History Channel. It was many, many years ago. But we're not condemned by the past, no, but we are still working through its legacies. So, the problem with sociology being the study of society is the problem of actually thinking about what society is. This unobtainable object. Ask yourself, what is a society? Okay. Every single answer you will have will be an answer which doesn't depend on sociology. Let me give you an example. So the first issue, you may say, society could be anything. It could be Abu Bakr said he was a society and not a scale, the club that's organized this. That's true, but you wouldn't, what makes that a society compared to something else? The problem of scale leads to the problem of boundary. When does Turkish society stop? At the frontiers of the nation state. When does French society stop? At the frontiers of France. So already in society, to conceptualize society, to work out the boundary of society, you have to have something which is non-social. And that is the political. In a sense, the construction of boundaries is always a political act. And at its simplest, it is the idea of the nation state does all the heavy lifting. When you say you will be studying a society, whether it's Indian society or Brazilian society, you are basically annexing the notion of the nation state to give shape to society, which is simply a flow of social relations. And there's no way of actually adjudicating where that flow should stop. So, what does this all have to do with the post-Western? The argument that was trying to make is that the institution of sociology, its place in the world, happened at a particular historical moment. And in that historical moment is almost like having the maps that I showed you and saying only map A is the map that we can use. And you could say, well, map A doesn't mean, what difference does it make? Because in most classrooms in the United States, they would have map A for a very long time. What difference does it make to people whether you use map A or map B? Again, this is a question for you to work out, nothing to do with me. I just ask questions. But the point that I wanted to get back to is the notion of what I would call anti-essentialism. And I want to say that is basically the idea that there is no essence to something which guarantees its form throughout time. In which case, I would say to you, modern societies and the idea of societies is something which is given an essence through the academy. One of the things that modern European education did was try and reduce things to particular categories. And then what European empires did was turn those categories, into want of a better word, into reality. And as a consequence, the question of what is society becomes not a question of describing something that's always been there, but describing a force of violence which created that something, and then forgetting the violence that made that something. So it is partly the forgetting of violence, and then wondering why things don't work. So dealing with the trauma of that. So I would like to think about the post-Western as not something which is after the West. It's not a temporal category. The post-Western is actually what I would say a theoretical category or a conceptual category. What the post-Western does is put a question mark at the front of the Western rather than at the back. And what it means very quickly is untangling three categories which I think have been central to the story of the West. That the West is not a geography, it's not a geopolitics. It is an amalgam of empire, because the West identified itself through a project of imperial formation and transformation of the world. And I'm not just talking about Britain or France, Dutch, the Belgium, etc. You couldn't be European at one point without having a colony. So much so that countries, for example, that emerged after the First World War, Poland, one of the first things they did was try and argue that they should get a colony in Africa. To be a proper country, you have to have a colony. It's a bit like now that you can't be a country without a football team and a flag. You needed to have a colony to be a proper civilized country. And they set up this association for the colonization of Africa. Even though most of Africa had been colonized, they were arguing that. Think about this for a minute. You have just had almost 100+ years of colonization yourself under Russian rule, German rule, etc. You become independent, and what do you think you should do to be independent? You need to have a colony of your own. This is not blaming the Polish, it's just understanding that the notion of empire was central to the notion of civilization. And these empires were racial and colonial. There is a really, really important point here, that racism was central to these empires. And therefore, colonialism and racism are one thing. So when people talk about the British Empire, the Dutch Empire, you're talking about racial states. And racial states meant that you categorized peoples, you gave them an essence based on what you thought was the race. The trouble was you could never work out the boundary of the race. But also, the West is an epistemological category. It's an episteme. It's a way of putting knowledge. There is a famous quote where a European scholar goes to meet an Ottoman official. I think it's either in Iraq or Egypt, I can't remember. And he's requesting all this information. And the Ottoman says, you know, joy of my liver, I don't know why you're asking me these questions. How many, what a man carries in his mule or what he has in his house, it is his business, it is not mine. Why do you want to know these things? Please don't bother me. So the idea that they wanted to know that knowledge was a way of mapping out the empire. Knowledge was a way of mastering fear. Knowledge was a way of measuring the world. But you can only measure the world if you yourself, of course, are not measured. In other words, how would you measure a meter? You would use a stick, which was a meter long. And you say, this is a meter long, and everything that matches that is a meter. But how do you know that stick is a meter long? You can't use that to determine what you've just measured. So, when we talk about the European episteme, think about it. To be the measure of all things means that you yourself cannot be the measure. You cannot be measured. You cannot measure the measure of all things. And in all of the knowledge that we produce, Europe recedes from the horizon. It recedes from the analysis. Even when they're talking about themselves in a narcissistic way, they're never really talking about themselves. It's simply an evocation of normativity. It is the point of what is normal, what is the measure by which everything else is measured. And I will say the final point, and the most important, is this was ingrained into the sense of Europeanness, so much so that it's almost impossible to imagine Europeanness without these kinds of functions. And I'll give you the final example, and I don't know how much time I've got left, but I don't know if anyone's been measuring or not, but again, such a European thing to do. But anyway, have I got 5 minutes? Oh, so okay. A recent example, a few months ago, Russia invaded the Ukraine, okay? Now, I'm not going to detain you with the hypocrisy that comes out of these things and people talking about, but give you an example. Condoleezza Rice, who was part of the Bush government presidency, was on television saying, when asked, anyone who invades a country, a foreign country, is a war criminal. Subhanallah. But she did not, yes. But let's leave that. These things happen, okay? I'm not going to, and there are many examples of this, yeah? And many, many cases. But the really interesting case was how quickly it was organized that this was Ukraine became part of Europe. It became the beacon of liberalism, the liberal order. And how did this liberal order manifest itself? When you saw refugees trying to get out of Ukraine, those from Africa and Asia were often taken off buses and trains when others were allowed in. When they were going to the borders, trying to get into the European Union, they were constantly being stopped. In other words, it showed very, very clearly that liberalism, which claims to be about all people, has always been compatible with racism. This was not new, it was just an illustration. The Dutch, the British, and the French considered themselves to be liberal, and they had some of the largest empires at the same time which had racial rule. So, Europeanness allows itself to think of itself as the measure of all things, and in that process has constructed the world, but more importantly, it's constructed our ability to see the world through those tools. So, what is to be done? There are many ways of doing it, but one project that I would call, in the last few years, critical Muslim studies, is really a way of thinking through the post-Western. And the post-Western is not the postmodern, it's not the post-structuralist. And the reason why it's the post-Western, as I've said before, it acknowledges that there is a growing recognition of the relationship between epistemology and Europeanness and empire. But that acknowledgement doesn't help us as long as it remains acknowledgement. Because what it means is that we all know people who say, I'm a very bad person. And the conversation stops. Okay, you're a bad person. Your therapist is happy with you. You've confessed. It doesn't make anything better. It may make you feel better because you say, I've owned up to the fact that I'm a bad person. But you've done nothing. In a similar way, the process of decolonization, and I'm talking about decolonization as a global phenomenon, it doesn't depend on whether you were directly colonized or not. Because whether you were colonized at the level of having European administrators or not, we were all colonized. The phrase, which I don't like, but I think is very evocative, there's a kind of a colonization of the mind. Why, for example, the Latin script was chosen rather than any other script to reinscribe Turkish? No, how was that different from the Russians imposing Cyrillic on Central Asia, or other attempts to Romanize languages? So I think we have to understand that the part of this project of universities can't simply be, yes, we've read Orientalism, we know about racism, we know about colonialism. Now, open your books to Sociology 101. It requires us to start reflecting on thinking about the analytical tools we use to understand the world. So, I guess the main thrust of critical Muslim studies then is really to try and think about how you would understand a history, not of the nation state or society, but different kinds of connectivities, different types of collectivities. So in the case of, I would say, those who may be interested in critical Muslim studies, would be a kind of public understanding of Muslimness. And Muslims are very, very well informed, despite what most of the ulama think about the tenets of their religion, right? They are woefully uninformed about the history of anything that follows. They may know history of the Prophet and the companions, etc. But once you move away from that, even in this room, how many Muslim figures could you name beyond your own national history as being significant? I think it's a question about rejecting methodological nationalism, which I think colors all sociological endeavor, that ultimately you start with the nation and society is just a manifestation, eruption of the nation. I think it also means rejecting sociological presentism, the idea that sociology is only about the present. You study society today without giving any sense of the idea of society as part of becoming rather than just being there. I think ultimately it means expanding the range of examples by which we understand the world. Think how quickly, going back to Russia again, did you notice that within weeks, Vladimir Putin became another Hitler? And what was odd, he was accusing the Ukrainians of being another Hitler. But what was also interesting is that how the commentary became, well, he must be psychotic. Many of you in this room are too young to remember, in the 1970s, in the Soviet Union, those who were dissidents, who criticized the regime in the late sort of Soviet period, they were put into psychiatric hospitals. The argument was, because the Soviet Union had reached human perfection, if you were criticizing it, it must be a mental problem. Have you noticed how anytime someone seems to be opposing the West, it becomes clear that they have a mental illness, even though those people have been dealt with many, many years? So Putin also became mentally ill at the time he became an enemy. While they were taking the money of oligarchs and things like that, it was never a problem. So there's an issue about expanding the range of examples by which we understand the world, rather than having to constantly go back to European history and European examples. I wrote in my previous book that the task that confronts people who want to cultivate the post-Western is twofold. One, there is the idea of clearing. You constantly have to make space to make different arguments. But that also involves a kind of a dreaming of a possibility of another way of thinking, another way of possibility. And I suppose the third step is that after you finish dreaming can lead to being. So you may say what I'm saying to you is a dream, and I would ask you to become dreamers so that we can learn to be post-Western, because the world itself can no longer be shaped by the exercise of Western power. And if we don't do that, we will fall into those anomalies. So my final point is really this one by Frantz Fanon. And it's worth keeping that in mind. So ultimately, the post-Western is a project. It is happening all around you. And the question is whether you want to contribute to its deepening, or you want to be those who want to prevent its happening. Thank you very much for your indulgence. I hope it was fun. Please, yes.
Thank you very much, Professor. This is the first time I met you, and I know a lot about you. But
That's worrying.
the question is that you displayed a slide, and under the category anthropology, you said the study of man. Is it quote unquote or something that the Western anthropology studies only man, not the people, yeah, and disregarding women? This is my question.
It's anthropos meant man, and I think I did make the point that man excluded woman, but the idea was that man stood for woman, children, everything. But also the idea of man was that it was a man before society, a primitive man. And there was also a certain anthropological romance about this idea that this is a real person in a way. So yes, it was in quote marks. I can't remember if the slide had quotes or not, but you're right to point that out. Yeah? We have a grammarian, yes. I apologize for my grammar.
Assalamu alaikum, Professor. My question regarding the whole topic is outside your presentation a little bit. It's about the term of post-Islamist movements. I think you're familiar with that term.
I have become very familiar with that because one of my PhD students over there is working on post-Islamism, so she might be able to answer your questions afterwards, but carry on.
So I want to hear your thoughts about the relevance of this term. Is it Western-oriented in some way, or is it just a theory that have such explanatory power to explain the developments of Islamic movements in the area, in the region?
It doesn't have any explanatory power for me. So I'm not very, I don't actually see much. I'm very interested why it's used, but I'm not convinced that it's used well or has any analytical purchase. But like I said, we could talk about that with Sumaya over there. She's wearing blue, so you can talk to her. She's just finishing her PhD, mashallah, so it's there on exactly the same topic.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your wonderful speech. It's definitely asking many questions and inviting us to think. I will mainly focus probably on the last or the before last slide, presenting alternatives, or let's say the foundations for creating alternatives. So I very much, clearing, dreaming, and being. So the more I subscribe to the post-Western, and I find myself as a woman, as a Muslim woman, as an academic, definitely dealing with this, ontological obligation to, find what are the grounds of the post-Muslim, whether as a mother or as a woman, a Muslim in the academic field, because I'm continuously questioned also by the same field. However, I want to also highlight the fact that as we are living in the post-Western, at the same time, this paradox where we are at the same time deeply Westernized continuously. So it's not, so the post-Western has been there since the, post-structuralism, with postmodernism, etc. However, we have not seen this new alternative, forming in an assured way, in a confident way, and even with the new generations, especially with when I see my students, when I see myself, if you see the new technologies, for example, and the way they're permeating our lives and shaping what is possible and impossible for us, we are seeing the world through these prisms. And I'm wondering, the more this is becoming possible for us to dream and think and be different today, the more also this domination is more insidious and is actually all over us. So in the way we think about families, relationships, in relating to the other, in thinking about the economy, actually the alternative is becoming harder to actually to shape. So I wanted your ideas about this.
I think it's a really important point that you've raised, a very profound one, a very powerful one. I would perhaps say two things. One, I don't think that the post-Western was so apparent when we talk about post-structuralism and postmodernism. It was a way of talking about the post-Western, but hiding the relationship between the West and modernity. So in a sense, I think it was slightly less apparent. But the more profound point really is this, that have we become so Westernized? My only answer to you is this. The Quran is written, is writing Muslim. Writing as a technology emerges, let's agree this for a minute, with the Sumerians. Now, of course, you could argue the Sumerians are Muslims and the first Muslims, etc., like they're first of everything else, but really, if you're talking about writing, and if you were supposed to have a conversation with a Sumerian, they might say something like this. Everything in the world right now is based on writing. We invented writing. Everyone has become Sumerianized. And what would be wrong with that? So the question isn't about the claim. It is how that claim would then be cashed. So would you want to say that the Quran, which is written and writing is Sumerian, also there are elements that we could say which come from other sources in terms of the stories which have been told many times in other traditions, etc. So at what point would you say the Quran isn't Sumerian, the Quran is Muslim? Khalas, that's it. So I don't think there's any, so the reason I'm answering you like this is the question of what is Western and what is not Western is not an issue about locating some essence. It's actually looking at how copyright is claimed. And that is always an issue of the political. So the challenge is to acknowledge that we can't go back to where things were before. However, it doesn't condemn us to not to be able to go forward in a different way. And to go back to the point that Ibn Khaldun, I would rather describe Ibn Khaldun as post-Western rather than pre-modern. Only because when we use Ibn Khaldun now, we don't use him in the way that he was being, how he saw himself. We find things problematic in him that probably were not problematic to him or to the community that he was writing for. So the idea of the post-Western, the reason why it's post is to show, like I said, the question mark at the beginning, that it is the marking the incompletion and the ability to see the incompletion. You never realize how precious oxygen is unless you're out of breath. And when you're out of breath, you suddenly realize you've been breathing all this time, and now you're having difficulties, whether you're running or something like that. And in that sense, I would say the post-Western is a condition of being out of breath. And the question for us then is, how do we learn to breathe again?
I think my question is kind of follow-up question. Thank you, Salman, for the great and provoking, let's say, presentation. When Habermas is using the concept of post-secular, he is addressing within the secular and the liberal mindset, the compatibility of the religion or religious with the secular liberal mindset or the ground. So in that sense, it's a conditional coexistence of religion with the hegemonic tools and powers of the secular. Again, it's a reproduction of the productive mechanism of the secular ground. So in that sense, by using the concept of the post-secular, how do you conceptualize this epistemic and ontological coexistence with the hegemonic Western tools on the ground? We have been talking about decolonization and decolonization of minds for a long time. So in that context, how this post-Western framework will able or enable us to find out about the tools of this decolonization, and is there any way out from there? Aren't we also kind of, as post-colonial or Muslim scholars, stuck somewhere there as well, repeating ourselves? I would love to have your reflections on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, this is a really, really important question. And I think my answer would be twofold. One, in a sense, is that I think the condition of being stuck is part of Prop's academic life. You know, we know people who spend 30, 40 years going over the same little bit of text that they've gone there. So I think that's one thing. But I think the bigger question, and perhaps I would answer it this way. Can I ask what religion everyone is here? All right, let me guess. Would it be right to assume that most people, if I said what their religion was, most people here would say they're Muslim? Yeah? And if I said to you that Islam is not a religion, hands up who would agree with me? Alhamdulillah. Okay. Now, I can understand your caution, because some people would argue that of course it's not a religion, it's a cult, etc. So let's forget about those people, because I know you're very liberal about your admissions, but I don't think they'll be coming to Ibn Khaldun University for that reason anyway. But the reason why I say this is that, okay, if you look at, I would say to you, the Quran doesn't say Islam is a religion. Correct me. It says deen, let's agree on that. Now, what does deen mean? Aha. Now, here's the interesting thing, okay? So deen means religion. Does everyone agree with that? Okay. What did deen mean before the category of religion? Because religion as a category only began to take place really around about the 16th, 17th, maybe 15th century, 16th century, let's say, 16th, 17th century, right? So the reason, which is a very interesting study, is if you look at the first translations of the Quran, which occur before religion, before the category of religion, they don't translate deen into religion. They couldn't. They talk about it in terms of law, or the sacred law. Now, think for a minute. Islam means the law. Now, because, and this goes to the point about how westernized we become, all of you would find that, sorry, but you can see the problem immediately, because we all think that Islam is a religion, and when we think it's a religion, what do we think a religion is? No, it's Christianity. Christianity is the only religion. There is no other religion but Christianity. Wait, it's not Christianity, it's Western Christianity. No, it's not even Western Christianity. It's the Enlightenment reading of Western Christianity. Now, is Islam the Enlightenment reading of Christianity? But the problem is this: when you look at, for example, in the Enlightenment, Islam was often mobilized in the polemics, Christian polemics, in one way or the other, either as being the ideal society or the worst society. Now, It's true that we devote, we see Jesus is a prophet. But do you follow Muhammad or Jesus? Okay, that's interesting. Again, we're getting into theology. I told you there is no escaping theology. But let me just phrase this to you. So let's take sorry, this goes back to the question. I've digressed a little bit. But if you think the way that religion is used in everyday language by Muslims and non-Muslims, by states and international organizations, it does incredible violence simply because it has a pattern of religion in which it says this is what it is, and if Islam or Hinduism or Judaism or Sikhism or whatever don't fit that pattern, we need to make them fit that pattern. And I'll give you two very quick real-world examples. After 9/11, American think tanks wanted to change the Quran. They thought that if you could edit out the jihad passages, like computer code, it would stop Muslims being jihadis, right? So there was attempts to publish and print Qurans editing out these bits. Okay, so that's a real way. The other one, of course, is among Muslims. If you takes to the question of Darwinism, why is it that so many Muslim polemics in recent years, relatively recent years, have started becoming concerned with Darwinism? The Darwinism as a problem arises in Christian Protestant circles because of the literal reading of the Bible, which says that the earth is only 6,000 years old. I would say to you, it is almost impossible to read the Quran literally, and there is no problem for us in that way, but we need to import that problem. Why? We import the problem of Darwinism so we can be like a religion. So I would say that one of the biggest dangers facing Muslims, and there are many dangers facing Muslims, so let's add to the list, is the Christianization, the de facto Christianization of Islam, Muslimness. That is the biggest, and it's done surreptitiously because we say it needs to be a religion, so then we say it's a religion. Religion is about inner truth. Religion is about what? We then start framing religion, and then we frame, I was going to say ourselves, but knowing us, we try to frame others before ourselves. They should behave in that way. So that's why I would say to you that those categories exist, but the fact that we can contest them is because the authority to make that happen is more challenged than it was. But we are in this very interesting period where things are opening up. They could close in very horrible ways, but it's up to us to make sure that they close in more positive ways. So both liberation and tyranny are always possible.
I have one question, please.
I'll be quick. I'll do my answers very quickly.
I have.
Thank you so much, Professor Salman, for, I would say, this giving us an opportunity to puncture this vicious circle of Eurocentric, positivistic way of, being and knowing the world. So it was sort of a self-reflection. My question is concerned with, though, what Immanuel Wallerstein says, that opening the social sciences, and what I would like to say that our university is sort of falls in the same line of, developing an alternative epistemology, what they call as a multiplex approach. And then we have, other efforts being done elsewhere in the West as well as in the East, whether in terms of, let's say, hermeneutics, which falls in post-positivist approach, as well as decolonial, efforts elsewhere in the world. But my main concern is when we, talk about decolonial approach, we say that, what was the first, what was the last, it should be the first. I mean, what they mean is like colonists, they changed this and this, so we have to. So I'm concerned about like what should be the contours of that going back to our originality actually. What Prophet said, khairu quruni karni, and then in hadith we see all those things. So I'm just concerned about what are the contours of that, going back to the original self, whether it is in terms of human being or in terms of societies and polity at large. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for your questions. I will answer very briefly, but it's an important question, so the brevity isn't the reason I do that. I think it's impossible to go back to the original self because I don't believe there's any origin. And in a sense, they're only beginnings, and therefore attempts to go back are attempts to simply write new beginnings. And the example I would use, if you were going to write your biography, where would you begin? If I said to you, you would begin with your grandparents, you wouldn't think this is unproblematic. It could begin with your parents, it could begin when you come to Ibn Khaldun, it could begin anywhere. But there's not one point that you would say, this is the proper way to begin a biography. And I would say the same thing. So there is no origin, there's only beginnings, and that's the work of the analyst. Thank you. Sorry.
Aisha Sayyid, my question is, I'm wondering about the focus of analysis and deconstruction of the critical Muslim studies project. Would it be confined to the West? Or in other words, or would it be inclusive in this unlearning process? In other words, how critical of what we perceive to be Muslim is the critical Muslim studies project going to be?
It depends on what you mean. Well, it's not going to be, it is, in a sense that it has got its own journal, it's got all of its developing literature, etc. But the answer is that it means what you mean by critical. The idea is this, it's an interrogation into the shaping of Muslimness throughout history, time, and space. That includes both inside and outside, those kind of ways. It's how Muslimness is being shaped. I hope that answers your question. Pakistan.
Assalamualaikum. It's indeed a pleasure always to listen to you, especially to your thought-provoking observations. Nonetheless, whenever I hear you speaking and whenever I look at your presentations, I often think of how, as a Kashmiri, I can imagine a post-Indian or a post-colonial idea of imagining, being, and becoming, and manifesting that Muslimness, considering the history which has always been written on Kashmir has been written first by the colonizers and then by the Indians. So how one can sort of, in terms of imagining, dreaming, and asserting, how can Kashmiris assert their Muslimness under the constant colonial gaze of Indian occupation? So how can we dream and imagine and then manifest this Muslimness in terms of Kashmiris vis-a-vis the Indian occupation? Jazakumullah khair.
Thank you for that question, Miraj, but I think you're a very good example of how it's done. So you should really just look in the mirror and say, this is how to do it. I don't think there's any shortcuts in that. I don't say it's easy. I think there are many places in the world, Kashmir, Eastern Turkestan, among the Rohingya, among Palestinians, and I'm sure I've missed out many other places where it's very, very difficult to imagine Muslimness going forward. But in that is perhaps the most, where it's most difficult is perhaps the most necessary to do so. And the only thing I would say is this, that it would be poorer if the imagination becomes confined. And this is why I think imagining Muslimness must have, or try to have, an ummatic perspective. And part of that must be raising the consciousness and awareness of the Kashmiri struggle, the struggle by the Uyghurs, the struggle by in Somalia, all of these to everyone in the Muslim Ummah. That's, I think, the task, one task that we can try and do in our small ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all these questions. And now I must stay on stage for a while because Professor Erket will be representing Keynote.
Oh.
Of memory.
Dear Hocam,
Thank you so
Hocam,
much.
thank you very much for this very, very, very inspiring speech.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Very inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. And in 10 minutes, our first concurrent session will begin in classrooms between 3 and B03 in our Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. In 10 minutes, you may have a break and you may enjoy the coffee. Thank you so much.
Break how many minutes?
10 minutes. Just for 10 minutes.
10 minutes.